Welcome, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm very pleased to introduce to all of you Rima Mrad, who's partner at BSA Ahmad bin Hedzim from the UAE. Rima is a partner in the firm. She specializes in financial regulatory and compliance matters, which is definitely one of the expertise that she will elaborate on today, but also on data protection and consumer protection and international data flows related matters as well. Rima is also one of the leading female lawyers from the Gulf. We are very pleased to have her here today. And Rima, certainly, Sabah al-Khair and Ramadan Mubarak. Please tell us about the new regulation introduced by the UAE Central Bank and the implication also on data protection matters.
Thank you very much for the introduction and Ramadan Kareem. Basically, I will talk today about the UAE Central Bank Circular number 8 of 2020 relating to consumer protection. And this is a very important piece of regulation that is much awaited. And it basically covers a lot of important milestones in relation to the overall regulatory framework directed to the relationship between financial institutions and consumers. In a very quick overview, before you start your questions, it's very important to note that these regulations were issued in January. They were signed in December, issued in the Gazette in January, and they were followed by comprehensive standards that were issued equally in February, signed in February, issued in March. Both of these documents together create a comprehensive regulatory framework for the consumer protection when dealing with financial institutions. And by financial institutions, I specifically mean financial institutions licensed by the Central Bank of the UAE, because in the UAE, you have 3 different authorities that do provide licenses for financial services. The Central Bank is the main and federal authority in charge of licensing financial institutions. But in addition to this, we have 2 other free zones, DIFC and ADGM. They are out of the discussion for the moment because this circular does not apply on them. I cannot hear you.
My apologies, I am muted. This is extremely interesting. So can you explain to us what this is expected to mean for financial institutions and also for consumers, actually?
It will mean for the financial institutions, for example, it will mean a lot. It will mean that they need to change their approach to dealing with consumers. It will mean that they will have to put in place appropriate policies and procedures to regulate the way they deal with clients. And it's not simply about the front people meeting with clients or the direct relationship between banks, financial institutions, and clients, but more about the way they market their product, the kind of information they do provide to customers, and so on and so forth. It will mean that they need to train their staff, and definitely it will mean that this will be a topic that the board will give attention to. As far as the consumers, for them, it will mean they will get to ensure that they are treated fairly, they are treated equally, and they are able to identify their rights and obligations. So eventually, both parties will have some responsibilities in the context of this document, but mainly the responsibilities is on financial institutions due to the extensive obligations they have under the regulations.
I understand. And so in your opinion, which is the expected influence of these new regulations and the standards?
Definitely, the regulation will have a direct impact on the way, as I said, banks are conducting their operations. But the long-term influence will be much more important. The long-term influence is we will reach a stage where the market is mature. We are, or the UAE consumers are able to have access to a certain level of financial products or a minimum level of financial products. It will sophisticate the market, and at the same time, it will elevate the nature of products that the consumers have access to at the moment. It will definitely push competition to another level. It will encourage financial institutions to up their game in terms of the products they're offering, the way they compete, in terms of bringing benefit to the consumer, and not only compete to provide the products at lower prices. I think I must give an overview about the law at this stage, just to know what we're talking about, like
yes,
what these regulations eventually deal with, or what's the purpose of these regulations. In a nutshell, the regulation itself is not that extensive. Nonetheless, the standards are extremely detailed and elaborated and developed. And the regulation in themselves, they deal with different issues, but they put a lot of new obligations from the perspective of consumer protection on banks. Mainly, they require from banks to deal with clients and to have minimum amount of disclosure and transparency. And this is very important. Most of the things that I will discuss today are present already in other pieces of circular or regulations or documentation issued by the central bank, but nonetheless not within the context of consumer protection and not under this umbrella. So basically, banks are required to provide a minimum amount of disclosure and transparency, and they are required at least to provide accurate and complete information to clients in relation to products. There are minimum amount of disclosure on the product itself, the profit, interest rate, risks, and so on and so forth. In addition to this, the regulation puts some obligations on the board. And this is what's relevant. The board of banks and financial institutions are now responsible to put in place appropriate systems and policies to ensure that these regulations are mirrored internally within the bank. And they have trained their staff to understand the law and to deal with people on this level. Other areas that are equally important is that the regulation do deal with market conduct and business conduct. And this is from the context of ensuring fair competition, accessibility and suitability of products to clients. And this is a concept that's extremely important. Financial institutions will now have to offer products to consumers based on their profile. Will this product suit them? Are they ready to take the risks associated with these products? But what also is very important, and that will be very relevant to you, because I understand you deal a lot with data, the consumer protection covers data protection and the way financial institutions deal with data or consumers' data. And they put minimum amount of obligations, including the need to get consent, and the consent should cover the use and the purpose of the collection. And also, they require from a financial institution to disclose the retention period. How do they deal with the data? Not to share data internally, even within the bank. Like the credit department cannot share it with the mortgage department. They cannot use it abusively for marketing purposes. And this is very relevant, especially for UAE consumers. So I think, and this is in a nutshell, like the overall overview about what the regulations are about. I also want to mention something very important. There is a specific reference at the end about inclusion, and this is also important. The regulator is looking for financial institutions to include vulnerable people of determination, to ensure that the products are accessible to everybody on equal basis. And this is a very, I think, important and relevant requirement that will push banks to offer products that are low cost, tailored for certain classes, and also to provide information in the context and with clarifications that suit the understanding and the level of awareness of the people receiving it.
Thank you very much, Rima. So we understand this is extremely important, is a big innovation in the financial market for UAE and therefore in the Gulf. It is very important definitely for international companies to learn about it, familiarize with these, understand which is the increased standards of compliance upon them when they want to operate in the UAE and the Gulf. And obviously we invite everyone to go to Rima for advice on what concerns actually this regulation, which, as she elaborated, has a new important impact also on data protection rights. So in the context of the activities of privacy rules, the firm of Rima is the exclusive member for the UAE and Oman within our alliance. Please refer to Rima for any matter you might have in the future. Rima, thank you very much. We believe that we will have to continue in the future with another Espresso talking about data privacy generally in the UAE, yes. But it was very interesting to meet you today. Thank you very much for that.
Same here. Same here. Thank you for your time.